My name is Henry Philip Lindsay, and I am going to tell you about my family tree a little bit. My father's name was Ernest Samuel Lindsay. My mother's name was Pearl Campbell Lindsay. My father was born as far as I know, in Gastonia, North Carolina. My mother was born in McCall, South Carolina. And my father was one of 11 kids and was raised on Arlington Mill Village. His father's name was Philip Lindsay, whom I am named after, and his mother's name was Maggie Jackson. She was from Cleveland County. My grandfather Phil Lindsay was from York County, South Carolina. My grandparents on my mother's side was Henry Campbell, I was also named after him, and my grandmother Annie Mae LaViner Campbell. Grandpa Campbell was from Rockingham, and grandmother Campbell was from Cheraw, South Carolina. And behind that, I really don't know that much, as far as that goes on that part of it. And as far as my father and mother, I don't really know that much further back on them either, other than Grandpa Lindsay, Grandpa Philip, and Grandma Maggie Jackson. I really don't have that much to go back on as far as that goes. But Grandma Campbell, she was a LaViner. Her father was from. I know where he was from. He's from Cheraw, South Carolina, also. But as far as going on back, other than that, I really don't know. I don't have a lineage wrote out, so I really don't know where they're at.
When did your grandparents move to Gastonia, or did they?
Grandpa Campbell, he moved to Gastonia during the Depression time. He was hunting the mill, hunting a job to work. He come to the Low Ray Mill in Gastonia. And he worked there, and then they had a strike at the Low Ray. So he went to Virginia, Danville, Virginia, and went to work. Then he moved from Danville, Virginia, back down to somewhere down in South Carolina. And then he moved back to Danville, Virginia again. Then he moved back to, to Rockingham, and then he moved to Gastonia again. And then when he got to Gastonia that time, he stayed. And he lived to be 72 years old. Grandma Campbell lived to be 89 years old. My father, Ernest Lindsay, he lived to be 64 years old. My mother, Pearl Lindsay, lived to be 90 years old. And as far as I can understand and have been told by my cousins and all on the Lindsay side, I am the oldest male Lindsay living. And none of the male Lindsays live past 68 years old other than myself. And I'm 73. So as far as I know, I'm the oldest Lindsay living in that.
He started a good tradition.
That's right. I was going to say.
So,
a new tradition.
And there's only one other Lindsay male, and he's 68 years old. He's my first cousin. He lives in Clover, South Carolina.
Red-headed?
No, Odie's not red-headed.
Oh, okay.
His name's William Odell. And I got one aunt left on my father's side, and she's 84 years old. I don't have her name. Is Ruth Wallace. I don't have any brothers and sisters myself. Well, I had a brother, but he died basically right after he was born. and he would have been 3 years younger than me. I have 5 children, 4 girls and a boy. Like I said, I got 11 grandkids and 8 great-grandkids. So hopefully the Lindsay name will carry on.
But you only have one boy, so
Well, yeah, but
got
two,
two
yeah.
children.
So you have to carry the Lindsay name on.
You remember anything about your grandparents that growing up? Anything that you remember about one of them, a story or anything?
Well, Grandpa Campbell, we lived side by side. We lived beside their house. And every Saturday I had to cut the grass and wash his car. Now, when I got old enough to drive, he let me drive his car. He wouldn't let his daughter or either one of his daughters drive the car. He wouldn't let nobody else drive the car, but he let me drive the car. He said he wouldn't let his daughters drive the car because he said women ain't supposed to drive anyway. Now that's what he said. He said women ain't supposed to drive. He said men drive, women don't. Now, you may not like what I said, but that's what he believes. He let me drive that car to Miami, Florida, 4 straight years in a row at Christmas time. Took him down to visit his niece. And I got to drive to Miami, Florida and see the North-South football game at Christmas time. And I got to drive the car down there and back. I had a good time with my grandpa.
It's a North-South football game.
It was an all-star football game, but they don't have it anymore now. But anyway, I had a good time with my grandpa. We would go buy groceries on Saturday. He'd come out to buy groceries on Saturday morning. He'd walk in the grocery store. He'd reach and get him a small Coca-Cola and stand there and drink it while she bought groceries, and then he paid for the groceries and went home. And then he took her to town to shop. He parked the car and he said, "You be back here within such a time." If she wasn't there, he left her. He drove on home. She had to ride a taxi cab home. Now that's the way my grandfather was. You may not believe it, but that's the way he was. And my daddy never had a car. He walked all the time until finally he decided, well, I'm gonna get a car. He went to Clover, where his grandma, where his mama and all of them lived at. All of his brothers and his sisters, everybody lived in Clover but him, and one of his sisters lived here in town. He come riding home in a car. Mama said, "Where'd you get the car?" He said, "I bought it." "How'd you drive it home?" "You ain't never drove a car." He said, "Well, the guy told me how to change the gears," said I drove it home.
How old were you when that happened?
16.
So y'all knew how to drive about the same time.
Yeah. I learned to drive when Grandpa let me drive to Rockingham when I was 14 years old. Said, "You ain't allowed to." Now South Carolina could drive when you was 14, but North Carolina couldn't. I drove to Rockingham and back. We just took off one Saturday. Mama didn't know I was even gone. When Grandpa and I just left, we drove to Rockingham and back. That's the way my grandpa was.
She get mad?
No. She just want to know where we were at.
Your grandfather was a twin.
Yeah, man, my grandfather was a twin, but he wasn't an identical twin, but he was a twin. And another thing I'll tell you about my grandfather. He quit school when he was 9 years old and went to work in the cotton mill. Him and his brother both. Because his family had no money.
They had to help support.
They had to help support the family.
Just like your mom.
Just like Mama did.
Kinda did.
Yeah. So, you know. There's a lot of good little old tales about my grandparents. My grandma Campbell, she wouldn't eat beans. She wouldn't eat a lot of things she wouldn't eat. Now she'd eat peas, crowd of peas, and corn, so like that. But she'd eat, but she'd make beans for Grandpa, and she'd put dumplings on top of the beans, and she'd eat the dumplings. Grandpa would eat the beans, or she'd put okra on top of the beans. She'd eat the okra, and Grandpa would eat the beans.
They always had a garden.
And they always had a garden, and she worked me to death in the garden when I got old enough to go down there and help her out.
Down there near the creek.
Down there at the
same
creek,
place?
behind our house on the creek bank, we had a garden, and she believed in having a garden because she was from what they call the sand hills of South Carolina, and they always grew their own food.
She lived out in the country.
Oh yeah, she lived way out in the country.
On a farm.
Wouldn't know she lived on a farm. You know. Grandpa Leviner, he would take off. He'd tell Joe and Grandma's sis brothers, y'all plow this, I'll be back tonight. And they better have it plowed when he got back too. He worked for the railroad, but he made them do the farm while he was going working. And he walked everywhere he went. Grandma said he never had a car.
There's something about the leg, one leg shorter than the other because he walked the railroad track. Who was that?
I wasn't never told that.
Oh, I thought you were.
That wasn't me. I don't remember that. But anyway, I think that ought to be enough. That's enough about my family.
Yeah, it's over 5 minutes. It's
How long is it?
Almost 12.